Hello, this is Laura Sawinski, Group Editor for the CropLife Media Group. This year, my colleagues and I on the editorial team have been flying around the country and talking to various folks in the crop nutrition space. In particular, we're doing kind of a deep dive on this topic and crop fertility, and following up with some folks, particularly for me, that I met at Commodity Classic, Galynn Beer from AgroLiquid. I had the pleasure of meeting Galynn in the AgroLiquid booth and had a really great discussion and wanted to follow up with him on some topics. So, Galynn, it's really nice to see you again.
I appreciate you having me on, and yeah, we had a good discussion at Commodity Classic, and it's one that could go on for a while for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. So the timing's right. End of April here, beginning of May. Wanted to follow up on some of the topics again, and one thing that we discussed was farmers and growers kind of delaying their input decisions, and certainly that trend has bared out. So wanted to kind of start with that. What are you seeing and what are the repercussions from that? Is there going to be an impact? And if so, how could farmers and growers potentially, kind of ease those risks?
Yeah. So yes, those decisions continued from our last conversation. The growers sort of were kicking the can down. And I can't say I blame them, Laura. I mean, it's just, we've kind of watched the commodity markets there, especially corn, drifted down over the winter months. And then you couple that with the higher interest rates, and it just makes you not want to make that decision. But guys are forced into that right now. And, hopefully a delayed decision didn't also mean a delayed plan. If you have a plan, sometimes you can still pull things out. To your point about what are the consequences, we might not know that until we get further into the season. Some guys might not know it till the end of the season, but definitely, some guys that waited to make seed decisions, fertilizer decisions, sometimes there can be consequences to that in today's supply chain.
Yeah, understood. So when it comes to making those nutrient input decisions, we also talked about kind of balancing lab recommendations on soil tests with, as you mentioned, kind of the economic reality of crop prices. What are you seeing on that front, Galynn?
Yeah, the one thing we always tell guys to do, as we discussed earlier, is, make sure you're soil testing. And it may not be this year's soil test. You could go back and look at your soil test from a few years ago, but it's most relevant if you did it this past year. The purpose of that is to take inventory of what that crop already has out there that it can live on over the course of the season. Mm-hmm. That way, I can not put money towards that. But soils are greatly different. I live on the high plains. We tend to be high pH, typically low in phosphorus, but really pretty good on potassium. All you got to do is cross over the Mississippi River, really even past I-35 going east, and potassium jumps way up there on the list as a priority. So that's one thing we tell guys to do is look at that soil test this year. Just make sure that we don't really have the luxury of spending money on something we already have out there.
Right. Good advice. Yeah, for sure. So another topic, and this one is a little bit new for me. I'm not as well versed in it, but I did want to ask you, because you mentioned about growers and farmers and how they can identify crop biases towards specific nutrients. What do they look for? How do they determine if that's happening? And likewise, how to respond to that?
It's one of those areas where either experience has to kick in for you, or you have to consult someone with experience, such as a crop consultant or a trusted ag retail advisor. But we definitely know that crops have biases. Corn has a bias towards zinc. You definitely have to make sure you meet the zinc needs. I mean, it doesn't like iron and manganese, but it's a little farther down the pecking order. Whereas if you go to soybeans or grain sorghum, or even wheat, that iron and manganese need for that crop is going to move above zinc. And so we just are hoping guys will kind of not not just assume there's about a 5 nutrient list and put it out regardless of crop, because you can get a little bit better return on your dollar this year if you kind of understand those biases that those crops have.
Okay. You also mentioned, and I recall this part of our discussion quite well. We talked about farmers and growers. How do they take, and how can you take, as difficult as it may be sometimes, taking that emotion out of the equation? Expand on that a bit for us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point, Lauren. It even sticks to me today, and planting season is here upon us. The growing season's right here. So the only way you can do that, man, you look at your phone every day, and if you see a minus on the price, it's easy to say, I can't afford zinc. But you don't know that. Like, that's kind of your emotion saying corn's going down, I can't afford to use sulfur or zinc or whatever it is. The reality is hopefully guys have a spreadsheet of some sort of profit and loss, and that is the way to kind of take the emotion out of it and walk through and allocate your money to seed, to nitrogen, to phosphorus. And then you can see, what do I have room for? And if you don't have room for zinc initially, there might be other areas in that budget that you can look at. Could your population go from 33,000 to 31,000, free up space to get zinc or copper or boron into that budget? So I think you have to have something that sets aside that emotion, that you're looking at the numbers, you're being honest with those numbers, and not making that decision just because the markets are irritating on that particular day.
Yeah. Finding comfort in the black and white and the tried and true, in a way.
I've actually surprised myself before. Just, you look at those numbers and you think, I can't do anything. And then you plug the numbers in and you go, all right, there's a little more room there. I was kind of letting my emotions run away with myself there. And you kind of then can sit there and make a little bit better choices.
Yeah. Well, I guess the last question, and it's kind of on a similar note, as we move towards harvest and planning for next year, what are the things that farmers, growers can learn from this year, and certainly can apply for next year as they're looking ahead?
Yeah, as they made that plan and executed it this year, and hopefully everything goes their way, I will tell you that sitting on that combine is a good resource, or downloading the maps from the combine if you're not the one on there. Because at the end of the day, you have to be honest with yourself. If you made a decision that said, I can't afford sulfur this year, and you cut it out, what is the yield map, or what is the actual production off the crop say, whether that be soybeans or pecans or whatever it is? You still have to have a way to do that. So the important piece is whatever decisions you made today, don't forget those, and remember those, and revisit those decisions at harvest to make sure that we have an awareness of whether we made good or bad decisions, so that we don't continue a negative trend going forward.
That sounds great, Galynn. Good advice, as always.
Well, we hope it is. I've worked in crop nutrition my whole life, and I still feel like I have a ton of questions I can't answer. So it's a life learning process. And to your point, harvest is kind of what helps us determine whether we did, make good choices or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, then I'll have to circle back with you then later this year. And
let's touch base after harvest. I'd be happy to do it, because that's where you get to see if you knew what you were doing in the decision-making process or not.
Sounds great. Galynn, thank you so much. Galynn Bear has been my guest from AgroLiquid. It was certainly great seeing you again. And yes, we will definitely check in again come harvest.
I appreciate it, Laura. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.